record on this computer. All right, cool. Now we're recording. All right. So like I was saying, once again, we just want to give a big thank you to Morgan for taking the time out of her schedule to talk to us. We'll be having a Q&A session at the end of Morgan's presentation, and I will drop a link to a Google form down below in the chat. So if you have any questions throughout her presentation, you can go ahead and send those in. And now I'm going to hang it over to Morgan.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you all and see some of you. I hope you're enjoying your school year at Maryland. I don't know what you all have to do remote-wise. Things have been so weird, but are you guys back on campus?
Kind of. We have like some classes in person, but most aren't.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'm sure that's a weird experience, but it's been weird for everybody. Let me share my screen. I do have like a presentation. It's really not that serious, but I don't know. Can you all see it? Yes?
Yes.
Huh, I cannot. Let me see. Is it like the draft thing of the PowerPoint, or like a presentation?
We have the draft thing, yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, that should work. All right, so about me, as Lauren had said most of these things already, but yeah, I graduated from University of Maryland in 2012. I was studying hearing, I forget what they call it these days, HESP, hearing, yeah, I don't even know, HESP, with a minor in linguistics. So from there, I was actually a speech pathologist. I went to grad school at George Washington University, and then worked in like Prince George's County public schools and hospitals and rehabilitation centers for about 6 years. And then I moved to LA in 2018 to start the whole filmmaking journey. So I did a lot of independent films in like the Maryland, DC, New York, Virginia area. But then after a certain point, just realizing like people were starting to migrate over to LA, and I don't know, you just kind of reach a certain point where it's beneficial to eventually go there. Which I will say, I don't know how many people are interested in moving to LA in regards to film, but I was very like anti moving to LA because like we can make films anywhere. I don't need LA to do this, but I did. So, and I can explain a little bit about that process and just some tips on industry stuff, like in general. I did do 2 other like filmmaking things. I went to the New York Film Academy program. They have like some 4-week programs that they do in the summer and like throughout the year. And I feel like that for me was the most helpful in terms of like really being able to like make an independent film by myself. Well, because you had to in the program, but you also just had to move so quickly and like work with a team, and it was just like fully immersive. So it's like, if you don't want to like commit to an MFA program, I think like those 4-week things are really, really worthwhile. I also did the UCLA professional program in screenwriting. So any writers, if you're interested in that type of thing, they do have an online program. It's like it's a 10-month program where you write 2 feature-length scripts. And the great thing about it is that since you do it, they consider you an alumni of UCLA. So you can like go to their campus and all their events and like use their alumni network, even though you didn't go there for school. And you can even like go to LA and go to their campus and act like you go there, or act like you went there because you did, which is nice. And then as far as like the genres that I like to do, mainly sci-fi, horror. I'm on like a dystopian binge right now, so that's what I'm doing. All right, so as far as, and I hope this stuff is helpful and relevant. I don't know, I was just guessing, I guess. But as far as paths to entry into the film industry, I was told there were three main ones. So one is being a production assistant, one is working for an agency, and one is going through an MFA program. So production assistant, there are so many opportunities to be a production assistant on multiple sets. People will do that for years and then end up like directing an episode or getting enough connections to be able to make their own feature film. So it's a really good way to just meet people while making money, and building those connections. I will say that it's very grueling. Like, you're working 10-hour days, lifting heavy things, driving people around, and it's a lot to have to do that like 6 days a week, and then still have time to like do basic human things. So it's good for like a couple years, but it's not like a sustainable thing. But by then you would probably be moving on to like other jobs within the crew. The next one is agencies. So I had included some agencies on the side. So UTA, CAA, WME. Those are the top ones that they'll usually take assistants. So you'll be working with an agent or a manager, basically being their assistant, which isn't fun because I mean you have to like not drive them around, but like drive and get their like lunch and do like personal things for them. Just really be kind of organized, a lot of paperwork. Basically whatever they want you to do, you kind of have to do it within like legal reason. But from there, you're meeting a lot of important like directors, actors, writers, especially like the top agencies. Those are where the top actors and A-listers will be. So just being able to interact with them and then eventually moving up the agency route, it just gives you access to those actors. It gives you access to people who have connections in the industry. And it's a really strong network because a lot of people start out in the agency like assistants place. So there's a lot of organizations that'll be like assistants group. So like all these assistants from different companies will like get together and like they have like-minded goals in films and they'll just help each other out. And it's good to just have that network of people. And then the third one is MFA programs. So I included like USC, Columbia, AFI, which is where I go, and NYU are the top ones kind of, but then Chapman, LMU, Loyola Marymount, and UCLA are good programs as well. Yes, so MFA programs. So I don't know if anyone is interested in MFA programs, but they, depends on where you go, but they are very, very helpful in terms of finding like what you want to do, meeting people who want to be in the industry and just really taking that time like as an artist. I know coming from like University of Maryland and not like being in an art program and then going to grad school and then that wasn't art related. And then like dedicating this time to like film and film only has been really helpful in terms of like getting a sense of like where I want to go and what I want to do and meeting the people that can help me do that. And then applications are pretty straightforward since you all already got into a college. So you know how it goes. I think the only thing that's pretty specific is just you have to include a short film that you made and also a screenplay. So that's pretty much that. Okay, I can talk about my school. So I love my school. It's great. I've wanted to go there forever. The difference with AFI is that we do so much production work. So, well, depending on, there's 6 disciplines. So there's directing, producing, cinematographers, production designers, editors, screenwriters. So they only accept a certain amount of people in each group, and we all kind of stay in those lanes as we're making things and taking classes. So when we have to make 3 short films a school year. So when we're making those films, like the producer will team up with the screenwriter and then they'll get the director and then so on and so forth. So we'll have that core team. And then from there, we find our larger crews and departments. So the crew is around like 30 people. And then this year specifically, we've had to build our sets because of COVID, or mainly last year, we had to build our sets, which has been a really good experience to like develop something from scratch and not kind of using the location as it is, which is what I was doing a lot well, just in life in general, just kind of shooting wherever you have. So it's really nice to be able to envision something in your mind and then actually make it something, because that's essentially like the next level in filmmaking, is like creating things from scratch. And then from there, we have to crew on 6 other films throughout the year. So the current cycle of films right now, they're 3-day shoots. So I just got off of a project yesterday, and I was a script supervisor for them. And the weekend before, I was the second assistant director. So then that's good too, and helpful to just kind of get that experience in these different roles with such a large crew. And then we have outside crew that will come in to work with for the AFI films, and then you connect with them. So now like you have a good roster of like first AC, second AC, production designers that you can like hit up if you ever want to make something on the side. For the summer, we don't have classes in summer per se, but a lot of people are doing internships. Usually they are in development. So basically reading a lot of scripts, doing coverage, and yeah, and just talking about things that the company should make or shouldn't make, just kind of being in the room for those conversations, which is super helpful. And it's also helpful because like prior to me going to AFI, internships are super valuable experiences for people to start out, especially in LA, but you can't, if you're not in school, you can't apply to them. So it's good to kind of have that room to be able to apply for internships, get that experience while I can, because after this, I won't be able to. Our second year is all dedicated to a thesis project. It can be up to 20 minutes long. The budgets are around like $50,000. So we have to raise a decent amount of that, but that's the stuff that will get submitted to the larger film festivals, and basically be our calling card for the industry, mainly for the directors. The writers, they come out with, I think, like 3 feature screenplays and like 3 pilots. So they have a pretty good portfolio of work after graduation, which is nice. And then same with all the other disciplines. Okay, so for this is like some tips in terms of how to not make the move to LA per se, but how to like get out in the world and be like ready to get work and that type of thing. So you need at least 3 writing samples. So that would be either 3 features and or 3 pilots. Super important, especially if you're submitting to not film festivals, but contests. So you'll win a contest, which is great, and they'll say, you know, what else do you have? And then if you don't have anything, then they'll move on. So it's good to have a decent amount of a body of work to just constantly give out and make. And depending on what area of filmmaking you want to focus on, it's really important to have a reel and a website. And the website can just be like a landing page, like a simple page, but people really rely on websites to like connect and communicate with people. It's good to have at least 1 professional picture and like a 100-word biography, just because you never know when you'll need it, and you will end up needing it the more you're out and about, and people like want to maybe feature you in an article, or they want to like include you in like some kind of fellowship or writer's lab or director's lab opportunities. So you just need to have that stuff ready to go. Another thing that's super important is to have an amazing self pitch. People will always ask like, so tell me about yourself, and you need to have something like very quick and to the point and interesting to get you going. And it's hard. I struggle with it still. So I'm just like telling you guys in advance to really work on that. You need money, obviously. LA it's expensive, but it's not, it's as expensive as probably like DC and New York City. But since it's not like a city and everything is so spread out, it just costs more to exist here. It's also good, similar to having the writing samples, is to have a slate of projects that you want to do just constantly in life, so that you're always working on something. Because people will always ask, in addition to like, tell me about yourself, they're going to ask, what are you working on? And if you're not working on anything, then it's hard to like just get people interested and engaged and all that stuff. So it's just good to always have something happening. In terms of working in the industry, it's really good to have an IMDb Pro account. They do cost money, but you can always see like what projects are coming up. You can get the content information for like all of the companies. So if there's a company you really want to work with, you can find like the assistant to so-and-so's email address, who will probably likely respond because they're an assistant, and you can get in that way. You can also see in terms of like what projects are being developed. If you wanted to be on set for a certain film, you can reach out to the producer, or usually the producer, to see if you can be like a production assistant on the set, since they haven't really developed their crew yet. So it just kind of gives you that head up where you can like make jobs for yourself almost. So it's helpful in that way. It's also good to watch a lot of television and movies, especially if you want to get into television, which is the more sustainable route to go into in general. They're always going to ask you what's a good thing that you watched recently, and you just have to like know everything. You have to know the style of each network, like what's good, what hasn't been good. Like you just have to know a lot about television from the very beginning. I would say it's also helpful to read a lot of scripts. The Blacklist, they put out scripts at the end of the year, and those are always good to read. And then the TV pilots for the year are also helpful too, because if you want to be a writer and you see the TV pilots that are coming up for that upcoming year, you can read it, contact someone that you find from IMDb, ask if you can be like their writer's assistant, and then boom, now you have a job. But that's because you've been able to see what pilots are going to be coming out before they're released in the fall. So pilots usually come out at around January, February. So it's super helpful. And there's also listservs. So there's a lot of different listservs in LA. It's like a weird thing, and they're just weird. Like people will just add you to it, and then from there they'll have like job opportunities. You'll get like the Hollywood event calendar that has all of the events that people go to and really connect at. And it's not that hard to get on one, but you just have to kind of like listen around and hear who brings one up so that you can like sneak onto it. Oh, and then the last thing I said is healthily stalk and legally stalk people that you want to work with, and just reach out. So if you just see anybody that you want to work with, like nobody is too big in this industry to not like come up to. So yeah, the sky is the limit. Let's see what I have next. Oh, so as far as like local involvement in like the Maryland area, I did a lot of stuff with Women in Film and Video. I'm sure you guys have heard of them, but they have a narrative directors roundtable, and they're really helpful with like getting you crew, getting you really good equipment. I know when I was with them, they had a red camera that they would just let us use for our films, so it was super helpful. And then other schools, like in Baltimore, they have a decent amount of people that are interested in film too, and it's good to just be involved with them and just meet people. And then thesis films for MFA students, so like Howard and Johns Hopkins, they have MFA programs, and thesis films are a really good way to like be on like set. Meetup.com has good opportunities, and then University of Richmond, University of Virginia also has good opportunities. But then Richmond is good, like production wise, because a lot of films are now filming in that area for, I guess, the tax reasons. So living in LA, I guess, yeah, this pertains to anyone who's interested in living in LA. Which are things that I would have liked to have known, especially because when I think of LA, I think of a city, and the cities that I know are like Chicago, Atlanta, New York, but LA is not a city, it's a county, and there's no like central area of like LA. Because I was like, the first time I came here, I came with my brothers, and we were trying to like find LA. So we just walked like miles around like downtown, Little Tokyo, Hollywood, and just realized like there is no LA. Like it's just all LA. And downtown is trash. You don't want to go there. So downtown sounds like a fun place, like in other areas of the world, like that's where things are happening, but like you don't want to go downtown in LA. I'm sure y'all have seen that. I forget the movie. About that hotel where that woman was found in the water thing. So that's right there in downtown. And then Hollywood is super touristy, which is fun like the first time, but then after that it gets kind of old. And I live in Burbank, which is where like Disney and Warner Brothers are, which sounds cool, but they're just like these gated off castles that you can't enter. So they just kind of, you see the sign, but it's not like you can really go in unless you pay for a tour. And it's super suburban out here, but it's nice because you can always find parking for like groceries and going to Target, which you can't always find if you're like in the actual city, where traffic is horrible. And I mentioned it's expensive. And then, so I live in the Valley. I don't know if can you guys see my mouse like moving around? Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. So here's Burbank up here. That's where I live. And this is Hollywood, like with the Walk of Fame. And yeah, so these are like all of the different parts of LA, and they're all so different. And they each have like something to offer. So it's really important to know, even when you want to visit LA, just to know where you want to go in visiting, because you don't, like, you would think you would want to stay downtown or in Hollywood, but I would recommend that you don't. Santa Monica is always nice by the water, and like Beverly Hills and stuff like that. So yeah, it's very, very spread out. This is just another kind of picture of the area. So like beyond Burbank, it's called the Valley, and that's where the cheapest areas to live are. And that's where most of like the younger people and people who aren't millionaires live. So there's like still a decent amount of like connections, but it will feel more like Maryland than any other place in LA would. So it's kind of nice. I think, oh, so other opportunities, I think this is my last slide, yeah. So other opportunities I would recommend checking out are to apply to fellowships, residencies, labs. If you go to filmfreeway.org and just like type in fellowships, residency, lab, anything like with that in the title is going to be worthwhile. I know for me in the beginning, I was interested in applying to or submitting to a lot of film festivals, but eventually like those cost a lot of money and that's it. Like you'll get something, but not as much as like an experience that like a fellowship or a lab would give you. And that's what would really help. Because in theory, you could probably just make up your own laurels and stick it on your film if you wanted to, and no one would know. So yeah, I said that. Attending all of the networking events in LA, it's nice because most of them will have an open bar. Always fun to find open bars in LA. where you don't have to pay for the alcohol or anything. And people are just very open to connecting at those, and you never know who you'll meet. So it's just like always good to be out and about. Make sure that you join a writers group, especially like after college, just like having a group of people to work on writing with. Also to make sure you have at least one hobby outside of filmmaking. That's super important. I know for me, filmmaking was my hobby in Maryland because I was doing speech therapy, and then now I'm doing filmmaking. And then people ask me what my hobby is, and well, now it's like roller skating, but before it wasn't. It was film. But you like, yeah, it's good to like sound like you have other things going on other than film. And then it's super helpful to take improv classes anywhere. It doesn't have to be in LA or anything like that. But Upright Citizens Brigade, UCB, is the most popular in LA, and you'll just like the improv community is so tight and strong that these are the people that are writing all of the comedies that you see, whether it be on film or on TV. So it's good to be connected with those people, because if you're interested in writing comedy or being a part of that genre, then you're connected to the people that are involved in that type of stuff. So yeah, I think that's my presentation. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, so I sent a link in the chat for a Google form that has your name and a question that you can send to Morgan. And so I've got a couple of responses already. So I'm just gonna go ahead and share some of those. So we have a couple questions from Jacqueline. So I'm just gonna share one for now. How do you balance your work as a speech linguist pathologist along with your filmmaking ventures? I also graduated from UMD with a degree in hearing and speech sciences, but I'm extremely passionate for film as well. And so I'm very inspired by how you're able to do both.
Yeah, the great thing about being a speech pathologist, especially if you work in the school system, is that like you get off at around 2:45, which leaves pretty much half of the day to do whatever you want. Then you have like long breaks, and you have the summers. So there's just a lot of time to be able to work on filmmaking. Especially, I worked in the Burbank school system in LA. So it was, yeah, just the proximity of being so close to LA and like going to things after work and just meeting people is easy. I will say it, for me, it was hard just because like after a while I didn't like doing speech therapy anymore. Not to say that like it's a great profession, amazing, but like just for me, I don't know if I just got tired of like working and doing like the same thing every day. But at this point I've transitioned mainly into film primarily, but I also will do like dialogue or dialect accent coaching. So it's the same skill set, but it's related to film. So I would suggest if anyone is a speech therapist and wants to do film to kind of go that route. And then even just like have your own clients that you see separately. Like you don't have to work for somebody. You can just have people that see you for services. So that gives more flexibility too.
Okay, awesome. All right, so our next question is from Adrian. And by the way, if I mispronounce your name, please feel free to unmute yourself and correct me. What was your experience like moving out to LA? Is it something you would recommend for people now? I'm an aspiring film music composer.
I would definitely recommend moving to LA. There's so many people that are like moving in and out. So depending on like what type of person you are, it's very easy to find similar people to room with. So it's not like you have to go and pay like $2,000 a month for an apartment. You can usually get away with like $500 or $600 a month if you find like the right setting. And there's a lot of opportunities to gain experience, but it's a little difficult to find those opportunities that are like sustainable enough like money wise. So there'll be plenty of ways for you to experience film and work on projects, but in terms of like making the money that you need to pay your rent, that might not necessarily be directly in film. But that's why it's good to at least start off in either the production assistant space or the agent assistant space, because those are like the bottom level places where you will make money and gain experience and work your way up. Yeah, when I moved, my move was like very weird, but I would recommend to, when you get here, to like stay at like an extended stay hotel or have a place that's like temporary, so that you can search for places to live, and then like sign a lease from there, because it's hard to just move, and I don't even know how you do that. Just move and I don't, just show up at the apartment that you found online. It's kind of, yeah, it's kind of dangerous. So don't do that. And it's always good to have money saved up. I shipped my car over because I didn't want to drive, and that wasn't bad like financially. And yeah, it's not as hard as people think, because I came out here by myself, but so many people, so many young people go out there by themselves, and they're all obviously ambitious because they all made this move away from their family to like create. So everybody's in the same position. So it's like, yeah, it's fine.
All right,
I would
awesome.
recommend
Thank you. And public safety is definitely our top priority. So this next question is from Vince, and I'm going to paraphrase it slightly. What advice do you have for aspiring actors? I have yet to visit LA, but I do go to NYC pretty often, and I was thinking of networking over there over the summer. They've done a little bit of resume and website building. Once I get everything in motion, what advice would you have for someone like me? I am currently a senior at UMD, and I'm not sure if I want to continue. I'm not sure if I'm interested in continuing school to pursue the entertainment industry. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, I know I have friends who live in Baltimore, and they go up to New York, the New York scene for work. It's mainly like television, cop procedural type stuff. So you can get consistent work in New York, but it just depends on if you want to do that for your career. In terms of like doing cop procedural, like Law and Order type stuff for the duration of your career. There's plenty of those shows, but if you want to do like movies or other genres, then you have to like look outside of New York. Atlanta is a really great place for actors to be, just because they have so many productions that are happening there. The only thing is that, and yeah, I guess for Atlanta, the only thing is that they will still source actors from LA, especially like the top names, and then they'll just fly them over for the production. And then like the smaller roles they'll cast in Atlanta. So it's a good way to get experience and be on screen for like a variety of things. Like I think Hunger Games or something was shot there. Just like a lot of stuff is shot there. So gaining experience on those sets and being on bigger productions, but like there's still a ceiling that you'll hit at some point if you want to like really be known. And that's why it's important to have an agent and a manager that are LA based, just because they'll have the connections to all of the major studios who are developing those projects on the West Coast, because then they can pitch you for the project and go from there. So I would recommend moving to LA. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to just build those connections, get that experience, and then get that agent and that manager who will help you get to where you want to be.
All right, cool. So the next question is from Iman, and did I pronounce that right? Okay, great. So did you or do you have a mentor, and how does one go about finding a mentor?
Yeah, mentors are so hard to find. They're super hard to find. I have a few, and it is good to have a few. I've just reached out to people honestly, and like have said that I like your work. Um, Chuck Hayward, he wrote this film on Netflix called Stepsisters, and then he ended up doing Dear White People, like writing that series. So I saw his name on the credits of Netflix, and I was like, oh, he wrote that well. That was really fun. I found I think it's Facebook, and I messaged him, and I was like, this was a great like story. I enjoyed it. What suggestions do you have about whatever? So we've been emailing back and forth, and you can just do stuff like that. Like if you find usually a smaller movie, like I don't know, message like Zack Snyder or something, and be like, I loved your movie. Let's talk more. But like those smaller movies that are around like Netflix, Hulu, whatever, even the ones that are like in independent film festivals, like Sundance, especially like the smaller shorts, like reaching out to them and seeing like how they got to where they are, and just keeping in contact with them. I think that's the hardest thing is like you can reach out to someone and say, hey, like I like your stuff, and they'll be like, oh, thanks, and then like that's it. But just the secret I think is like asking for their advice on a question, or like asking for advice or any suggestions about something, and then like you go and do it, or like you read this book they recommended, and then you come back to them and you're like, oh, I read the book, it was amazing, like can we talk a little bit more about this chapter, and then just like having that back and forth. So if they give you things to do, which they will if you ask them to give you things to do, then you can do them and then come back to them, and then like they'll see that okay, this person does things and finishes them and is serious, and then they can connect you to other people, and so on and so forth. So that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. All right. So the next question is from Stefan. And I'm going to tweak this question just a little slightly. What would be your advice for people who are seeking funding to go to film school? And where would those sources of funding come from?
It depends on which school you go to. Like USC, Columbia, AFI, like usually like those ones, they'll give a decent amount of funding. Just especially like USC, because they have such a big alumni network of people that are making money, so just like give them money for stuff. So that's usually the way that most people get money. Outside of that, I don't know anyone who really applied to any like outside things and got them. But I will say that like the school that you apply to usually has specific scholarships that you have to apply to anyway. So it's like you wouldn't just find them out in the world. It's like, okay, if you're going to this school, then here's the ones you can apply to. So if you apply to those, then that's where the money will come from. But that would mean you would have to like apply and get in and then figure out how to pay for it, versus like figuring out how to pay for it and then applying and getting in. So it's like you kind of have to take the risk of trying first and then seeing how you're going to make it happen.
Okay, and then this next question is from Sam. What are all the considerations in terms of making a career transition that one should think of as an alum with a stable-ish job?
Absolutely. Yeah, I came from a nice salaried job with health insurance. And now I don't have either. I mean, I have health insurance, but now I don't have either of those. So it's a big jump, but I think it's like a personal thing. I know for me, like having that salary year after year was very comfortable, but in theory, I could probably go back to it, and it wasn't fulfilling enough. So it's just one of those things where you just have to take that risk for even whether it's 2, 3, 5 years. And if it's like that horrible, then yes, of course, go back to that job. But at least you know that you tried. Like my biggest, because I used to work with the elderly, and they were unfortunately like dying all the time. But they would always talk about the things that they regret doing. And I would just hear that all the time. And it's like, you don't want to get old and regret trying something, because you don't know what could have happened. You could have gotten all your dreams, like everything you wanted, but you just didn't try. So just try, like, please. And then this is random, but another thing that made me quit my job like immediately, they sent me my retirement like letter, like, oh, this is the money you'll receive after you retire. So they were like, oh, in 2048, you'll start receiving this amount every other week. And I was like, 2048 is a very long way from now. That's horrible. So they thought they were like giving me this wonderful news, and I'm like, I quit. I don't want to be here until 2048 for this money. So yeah, you just kind of have to do what you feel. I even not feel what you want to do, but just always be pushing yourself in life. And if you feel like you're too comfortable, then like you're better than that, and you should be pushing yourself for that better stuff.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go back to one of Jacqueline's questions, and I think we're going to combine two of them. So what is the best way to get involved in the Washington, D.C. film scene, and how does the D.C. film scene differ from L.A.? And on top of that, do you prefer one or the other?
Well, I definitely prefer, I prefer LA in terms of like the variety and the creativity that people have in terms of projects and how people are willing to experiment. In DC, people are very documentary oriented and like just politically oriented type content. So it's just like a different vibe, and you can definitely gain skills in filmmaking by being in DC. But in terms of like, oh, I want to make this project about like, I don't know, this snake driving a car, like no one is going to be interested in DC, but in LA they'll be like, awesome, like let's find the snake in the car. So it's just they're just two very different things. And in terms of like getting involved in the DC film scene, I would recommend the Women in Film and Video, because that is in DC, and they always have events that are like super helpful. And then even just like the DC Independent Film Festival and the Shorts Festival, like just like volunteering at those events is a good way to connect with the filmmakers who are there and like the people that are like running film stuff in the area, because they're usually producers. So if you're meeting producers, then you can get your work produced, so which is always nice. And yeah, it's pretty small in DC, but it's there to like learn enough to figure out like what you actually want to do in film, which is good.
Awesome. So we have another question from Sam. What does it take to get signed to an agency?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. There's multiple ways. So there's agents and there's managers. Managers are more helpful because they like help you become a better artist, and they will tell you like what to work on, how to build your like personal brand, and then they help you put it out there. Agents, on the other hand, are usually just the only way that you can submit to a company, because they don't allow like unsolicited stuff to go to them. So like the only way you can apply to like a film or like submit your script to a company is through an agent. You can't just do it yourself. So agents don't really do anything other than hand over like your script or your resume. And that's just because you say, hey, I see this project, I think I would be a good fit, can you submit it for me? And then they will. So it's like they're just like passing stuff over, but managers are super helpful. What you can usually do is like find some and just like send them letters, like not a letter, an email, and just send like a small couple sentences and say like who you are, what you want to do. It depends on if you're acting or if you're like writing, but what you want to do, and then see what they say. You can send them or like a reel or a sample if you're an actor, or like usually just a sample if you're a writer too. and go from there. It's also helpful to know a lot of their assistants, because eventually their assistants within like a couple of years will become agents and managers. So if all of your friends, and not all of them, but a decent amount of them are assistants, then a couple of years from now, they're agents and managers. And then of course they're going to represent you and represent you well because you guys are friends. So I think that's the most organic way to go about it. And then the other way that people usually go about it is through festivals. So if you win a competition, then usually they'll like rep you right after that. Or if like a company wants you, then you have to get a manager and agent for to be able to accept the job. So you can't just accept jobs until you have an agent or a manager. So there's different ways.
All right, awesome. So the last couple questions are from the board members. So what experience, how did COVID affect your filmmaking experience?
Yeah, that's a big one. A lot, especially since when I started grad school, and it's still all remote with the exception of like production. And when the world shut down last year, like LA completely shut down, like completely, like you could not leave your house. So yeah, everything was dead. But at the same time, it kind of leveled the playing field because nobody could do anything. So it's like you could make things in your house, just like all the other celebrities were doing. Like it's just, you could make the same content that everybody else was like had access to and could make. It gave a lot of people opportunities to write. It also made like the studios and the networks realize how much content they need to keep up with like viewing, because people have been binge watching stuff like all year, so they'll finish seasons like in a day, so they need so much stuff to keep up with what people are watching. So it's just given a lot of opportunities for writers at this point, because they're just picking up so much, and there are so many streaming services now that they need their own content as well. As far as production, nothing's really changed like when being on set. The only thing is just like obviously you have to stay like 6 feet away. You have to have like this face mask and like stuff. So it does get like really hot. And it's just uncomfortable, and it's weird because like, especially if you don't know some of the crew members, like you can go the whole like shoot and never really see their face. So yeah, it's like you can just be working with someone for a whole week and then you see them out on the street and you would not know that that was the person that you had been talking to freely that whole week. So that's like the kind of stuff that's a little bit weird. And the big thing in LA is like how much networking happens at events and out and about, and the fact that like that has not happened at all. It's been very, very difficult. But I mean, like I said, it didn't hurt any like thing in a bad way, just kind of leveled the playing field. So I think now is a good time to like jump on to like the next wave of filmmaking, because there will be like a post-COVID wave. It'll be different.
Yeah. And when you said the mask thing, I just think of like you meet people and everyone has a mask on, and then when you see them with the mask off, you're like, I didn't know your face looked like that. You have a completely different picture of what they look like in your head. So we have a new question from Sam. Could you distinguish the real difference between producing in terms of funding and being on the ground and doing the work?
Yeah. It depends on what kind of producer a person chooses to be. So there's line producers, and those people will only deal with like money and nothing like creative. Then there's like middle type producers who will work on they'll work on the funding, but they'll also work on all the paperwork, securing locations, finding the crew, making sure that like everything is staying on the timeline. And then there are creative producers who are almost like with the director in terms of like making the story happen to like from its like inception. So like if two people have an idea and they move forward with it, eventually they'll like branch off, and then one person will be working like in the producer like space and the other person will be directing. But in the beginning, it's kind of like they're doing the same thing in terms of like making the idea become real. So it really just depends on like what type of producer you want to be in what capacity, because there's like so many different producer credits that you can have. So it just depends on like what you want to be.
All right, awesome. So there's about 5 minutes remaining. So with that, I'm going to ask, the cheesy question. What advice do you have for any aspiring filmmakers?
Advice. I guess everything that I've said for the past 55 minutes. Keep writing for sure. Like write every day. Everyone's gonna say that. I don't write every day, but my goal is to. So definitely try to do that. And just especially if you want to be like a director, just keep making shot lists for things, storyboarding ideas, watching films and breaking down like what shots they're using and how they're creating it. It's super helpful if you watch a scene from a film and you just actually recreate the shot list and recreate like the overhead of what they did, because it seems easy, but it's not. It's actually pretty hard. And the more you do that, the more you can create shot lists and sequences that are on par with the stuff that you're seeing, because you're getting used to kind of like using the language that they're using visually. And yeah, have fun. Please, like have fun. If it's not fun, don't do it. That's for anything like in life. So yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for once again taking the time out of your day to talk to us. I know I can speak for all of us here that this advice and information was super helpful and super interesting. Do you have a place where people can contact you if they have any further questions?
Yeah, I can I guess send you my email.
Yeah,
Or
sure.
you kind of have it, but if you want to share that, then that's fine. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. We'll probably attach that to the recording of this video. I think we'll either post it on our Facebook or our YouTube.
Okay.
We also, just a reminder to everyone, we have a Facebook, a YouTube, an Instagram. Just look up Maryland Filmmakers or Maryland Filmmakers Club. We also have a Discord server where we talk about all things movies and everything. And yeah, just final time, and I can't say enough, thank you, Morgan. This was great. We really enjoyed having you here, and good luck to everything you do. Hopefully we'll check out some new projects soon. But yeah, so thank you to everyone for coming, and thank you to Morgan.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was fun. It was nice to meet you all.
Yes.